from the palatial studios at Emerson College in beautiful downtown Boston. This is the Jeff Santos Show on the Revolution Radio Network. Rebuilding America, together, investing, activism, and supporting the middle class. Now, here's Jeff.
Thank you, Shane, and good afternoon, Americans, and welcome to the Jeff Santos Show. We are live in Studio A on the campus of Emerson College. It is great to be with you today on this 5th of April, 2016. Got a great show for you today. Wisconsin is the big story, of course, and we'll be chatting with a couple of locals and a couple of regulars with the Jeff Santos Show in the 4 o'clock hour. We'll talk to our good friend, former Milwaukee talk show host, African-American community activist Earl Ingram. Will join us to get a perspective of what is happening in Milwaukee. We'll then take the entire hour and devote it to Wisconsin at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and talk to Robert Craig of Wisconsin Citizen Action. We usually have him for a half hour, but considering today is the Wisconsin primary and how important it is on both sides of the aisle, we decided to talk to Robert for an entire hour, give him that opportunity. We'll start it off, of course, with our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield from the great Pacific Northwest. 34 minutes past the hour. The great sound of Pearl Jam, reflecting the fact that we need to go out to a place that was the home of grunge in the early 90s with Nirvana and Soundgarden and, of course, Pearl Jam. And that means we go out to see our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield, great independent journalist, with us every Tuesday at 3:30 Eastern Time, 12:30 Pacific. We bring in Mark from the great city of Seattle. Mark, how are you? Happy Tuesday. How are things?
Oh, good, Jeff. By the way, Seattle still has a very innovative, original music scene, and you can even check out my band. I'm in a group called the Galaxy Machine that does a lot of sort of electro, funk, rock sort of music. So we've got some videos out there on YouTube that folks can check out and that kind of thing. So Seattle is still rocking, and it still has a good underground music and art scene. Despite all of the gentrification, there are still artists here doing good stuff. Yes.
Well, still rocking in the free world, Mark Taylor-Canfield. That's good to hear about the great city of Seattle. And a city that was overwhelmingly a big part of the Sanders three-state victory back in a week and a half ago or so. And, look, I think, I guess now 2 weeks, the fact is that we are now in Wisconsin on the way to New York. And there is a lot of people who are very worried if you're in a Clinton camp, and pretty bullish if you're a Sanders campaign. He could potentially win tonight and again in Wyoming. That would be 7 in a row, or if you include the Democrats abroad, 8 in a row, 8 contests in a row going into New York, where Secretary Clinton has a 10-point lead, but she had like a 40 to 50-point lead just a month ago. And now the momentum with Bernie, and we see the attack dogs last night on a couple of stations. You get the Carvilles of the world and Barney Frank, and all these folks that are apologists for Secretary Clinton, all these folks who, and Barney Frank really frustrates me because somebody from Massachusetts, somebody that I really liked and helped push the progressive talk stations here in Boston, but basically that was several years ago, and he's now on a different mission, I guess. And of course, Carville, is an attack dog extraordinaire, kind of a bully in a lot of ways too. I've seen that myself, in the times I've had a chance to interview him. But I think what was created, and I think you saw it firsthand at Safeco Field with the Mariners play with that huge crowd, that people now are getting Bernie. And it's not just a bunch of coffee drinkers, who are, hanging out at the local record store. These are people wide and diverse. And I want to talk to you about that because Seattle, gets a reputation is that it's a haven for 20-somethings, and there's obviously a lot there. But there are a lot of people in their 30s and 40s and 50s that are Sanders supporters, and you don't get the massive numbers of people to come out unless you're getting older voters as well. Talk to me about that from the Seattle region anyways, Mark.
Well, not just Seattle, but of course, you had Al Franken speaking for Hillary Clinton the other day in Wisconsin, so that was very disappointing to folks who used to follow him on progressive radio when he had his own program.
He's another one who's basically sold out. Yeah, well, there's a lot of them now, unfortunately. They're all out for themselves, and, this is why it was kind of ridiculous last night to hear Barney Frank saying, the establishment, all these people, why can't they go with Bernie? Why are they all with Hillary? The Black Caucus, of course, the Black Caucus takes a tremendous amount of money from major lobbyists, Wall Street included, and Big Coal, and so on and so forth. You have a whole slew of people, and it's disappointing to see that a lot of people that, you would think would be progressives. And I know you can throw out Sherrod Brown, you can throw out Tim Ryan, all of these folks been on this show, and they're all now a sort of, Bernie can't win, or Hillary is this great reformer. Please, tell the truth. And then, unfortunately, it is not the truth, and they're trying now, and now they're sending out the attack dogs, which is the case. But I want to ask you again, I believe that what we saw in Seattle is maybe a turning point here in the fact that he was able to bring out a large portion of people, not just a small amount, not just to edge out Secretary Clinton, but when you win by 70% of the vote and you get people up and down the demographic group, that to me shows a significant change in how this campaign is going. Mark, your thoughts?
Well, you can ask the delegates for the Democratic Party in Skamania County, Washington. Bernie won by 90% in that small rural Washington state county. I've actually been communicating with the New York Times Seattle bureau chief about his coverage of what's happening in Washington state, and he's asking me, what rock clubs, what bars and restaurants and coffee shops do I need to hang out with to talk to Bernie Sanders supporters? And my response to him was, everywhere you go, you will find Bernie Sanders supporters at every venue in Seattle. So take your pick, right? And Washington state definitely represents this new momentum along with Alaska and Hawaii. We saw it happen in Nevada, right, Jeff, where Hillary Clinton comes in with huge numbers, and then at the last moment, Bernie closes the gap really quickly. And that's happening all over the country right now. So there are actually some efforts by some young folks in Washington state to lobby the congressional delegation here, the Super Delegates. And by the way, I just did some political satire cartoons about Bernie and the Super Delegates, and I represent them as superheroes with these super political powers who, they can fly through the air and zap you with the lightning rods from their, rings. They're just very powerful people. But Bernie is also a superhero, and he's proving that every day. He has the ability to bring in all sorts of new people into the Democratic Party, new potential future voters, a new demographic for the new direction of the Democratic Party, which is what I'll be writing about at Daily Kos this week, is the new direction and the fact that Bernie Sanders does represent the future of the Democratic Party. So here in Washington state, you have a group that formed a Facebook website, and they have around 700 members, even though it's maybe, a week too old. It's called the Impossible is Possible movement. And what they're doing is they are meeting with the congressional delegation, with Maria Cantwell's office, with Patty Murray's office, and they've already dropped off letters from constituents asking the superdelegates to change to Bernie Sanders. They had one meeting with a staffer from Jim McDermott's office last week, and then this Thursday they're going to meet with McDermott's office again. They're hoping to get a meeting with McDermott. And the report that I'm getting from Wes Irwin and the folks that are involved with that group, who would make a great guest for your show, by the way. He's a young music industry guy who got really into the Bernie Sanders campaign, and now he's working for the state campaign. But they are on their way to Governor Jay Inslee's office today to drop off a letter there asking Governor Inslee to change his vote in terms of the super delegate endorsements. And so it's picking up momentum, and they are they're telling me that so far, in terms of Cantwell's office, Murray's office, that they've got the best response from Jim McDermott's office, that they've been the most willing to meet with them. The report that Wes gave me just before I went on the air was that Cantwell's office and Murray's office weren't even very happy about accepting a letter from them on this issue. But it does look like McDermott's office is going to meet with them again on Thursday, and they're saying that if they don't get a response from some of these superdelegates, that they're willing to do protests. So the young folks in Seattle especially, and in Washington State in general, are very, very enthusiastic about the Bernie Sanders campaign, and it doesn't look like they're going to back down. They really believe that the superdelegates, especially in Washington State, are not representing the results of the state caucus, and they're calling it undemocratic and unrepresentative of the Democratic Party, especially this new wing of the
I couldn't agree with
Party.
you more. And I hear now that there are rumors, I don't know if this is the case in Seattle, Mark, that they are saying, okay, you want to play this game? We're going to primary you if you go the other way. So you can, there are a lot of ways, and this insurgency on the Democratic side, very, very similar to what we have seen, in the past when you've had a reform movement in the 1970s. The Watergate thing is exactly what I'm talking about here. That to me, we are at a point that people do not want to be stiff because the establishment always gets their way. Again, Villanova proved it last night, folks. The underdog can indeed win. We're right back with Mark Taylor-Canfield. It's the Jeff Santos Show. "49 minutes past the hour. It is indeed the Jeff Santos Show. Rocking into the 4 o'clock hour with Mark. Of course, he's got his own band. We got a lot going on in the Republican side of the ledger as well. Donald Trump got a big election tonight in Wisconsin. And wanted to ask you, Mark, this whole thing, because I know you've done a lot with the Reporters Organization, which looks out for violence against reporters, and of course with the Trump campaign, that's a daily watch organization because of what was happening now with Corey Ledowski and the campaign manager, who some people believe may be replaced soon. As the Trump people look to sort of shake some things up. Where are we? I mean, this reporter Breitbart group, Miss Fields. She was just trying to ask a question, and they've made her out to be the she devil here. What are you guys learning from the Reporters Organization that you're communicating with about this situation? And again, it's just not this one scenario. There have been reporters that have been tackled, camera people that have been tackled by the goon squad of the Trump folks. So, it's a ongoing occurrence. What are you hearing?
Well, Jeff, this is a subject that I take very personally as an advocate for freedom of the press and the protection of journalists. We've had, situations here in Seattle during May Day protests where this last year, a Seattle Times reporter was burned by a concussion grenade, a flashbang grenade, where, I was subject to these flashbang grenades as well. And so I've been writing about, the need for protection of journalists at political events for quite a while. And I also am contributing editor to Democracy Watch News and also a reporter there. So we've been covering this very closely And we also have a wing to that news agency that is a media watch group that tries to look out for the rights of press, members of the press. And so I've encouraged Michelle Fields to file reports with several organizations that were founded to advocate for the rights of journalists, including Reporters Without Borders, which, by the way, Jeff, ranked the United States 46th in the world in terms of press freedom, which means that there are 45 other countries that have more press freedom than the United States, according to that group, which is an international...
Well, just roll right there, Mark, because let's just think about this. This whole Panama situation was broken not by an American journalist, but it was broken by a German journalist. And there are a lot of Americans that are probably going to come out over the coming days as well. So to your point, I mean, the idea that we are all Woodward and Bernstein and we have all this freedom of the press, not necessarily true. I'm glad you brought that point up.
Yes, not necessarily true even in the so-called independent alternative media in the United States, where I've had a hard time getting this story covered. And it's quite telling when, a story about the low ranking of the United States in terms of press freedom doesn't get covered even by the alternative media in the United States. So that'll tell you the problem that we're facing. But there are other groups as well. There's the Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ. There's also the Reporters Committee to Protect Freedom of the Press, and of course the Society of Professional Journalism. So I've encouraged Ms. Fields to report this incident because this is an ongoing issue. You had reporters being arrested, Associated Press reporters and alternative media and webcasters and live streamers being arrested during the Occupy Wall Street movement in the United States, which is one of the reasons why Reporters Without Borders started ranking the United States lower. We've had a precipitous drop over the last 5 years in terms of perceived press freedom in the U.S., and that's not because we have a state-run media, Jeff, like, they might have in Iran or Russia. This is a corporate-owned media, and that's where the censorship comes from. So this issue with Corey Lewandowski is very important in terms of the rights for reporters to cover political events and to ask direct questions of potential, political leaders. So I think this story has really brought the issue to the forefront in the United States, which needs to happen. So in that way, it is serving a purpose. But it really needs to be an issue that folks in the broadcast media and schools of journalism really need to focus on this issue. As an American journalist, I cannot say that I'm proud of the fact that we're ranked 46th in the world in terms of press freedom. And this example of a campaign manager, manhandling a reporter from the media at a political event is what we have to watch out for and what we can't tolerate in this country if we want to protect freedom of the press. And then also, you can throw in there some of these Miami Herald stories about Lewandowski's attorney, who, Mr. Coffey, has already had problems in his career in the past. In fact, according to these Miami Herald articles, he allegedly bit a stripper, which was one of the reasons why he lost his prosecutor's job. And then you've got Corey Lewandowski, who apparently, according to Politico and CNN and some other reports in the last couple of days, is starting to lose his grip on power within the Trump presidential campaign, precisely because this video went public. So there's another example of how information can break, which can really affect a national story, just like with the Panamanian story, where it was one of the largest data dumps in history. This video of the incident between Mr. Lewandowski and Michelle Fields has gone viral, and it counters what Donald Trump himself had said about there was no assault, there was no contact made there. It's pretty obvious that the video shows some kind of interaction happening. And so according to CNN and some of these other news reports, Donald Trump has been having meetings where he's been asking his supporters and consultants questions about the political fallout from this incident. And therefore, Lewandowski's job might be on the line. I mean, he is being.
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, I mean, just think about this. And this is the whole thing with Donald Trump. He mentioned today on an interview with our good friend Chris Jansen and MSNBC, he said, I don't get good press. I mean, look, this is not a real estate, media. These people who just write about real estate. This is what he thinks he has. And he has his campaign manager acting basically as a bouncer. I mean, the campaign manager shouldn't, number one, be around the media. That's for the communications director to be, which I believe her name is Miss Hicks. So they have the whole structure wrong, unless, he's obviously doubling as a bouncer for Trump. I mean, this is crazy stuff. And, it's just beyond any sort of reasonable understanding of what a campaign should be run like. We have campaign managers and consultants on all the time. They never heard of such a thing, of a campaign manager going out and grabbing people.
Well, yes, I'm used to Fox reporters trying to elbow you out of the way so that they can get their film shot. But I'm not used to campaign managers doing these kinds of things. First of all, there should have been some other kind of security besides his national campaign manager there to deal with this situation. I have to tell you, Jeff, that I did win a major federal civil rights lawsuit, a landmark case in Washington State in 2013, and that's because I was barred from reporting on the Washington State legislature by the Washington State Patrol, which was handing out these so-called, no trespass orders, which were completely illegal, which were extrajudicial punishments.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, Mark, but that is the tragedy of today, and I'm glad that you won that suit. I appreciate it. 58 minutes past the hour, Mark. All the best. We'll talk to you next Tuesday. We're right back. And then we'll also deal with the issue of Hillary and Bernie, which we'll get to in a second here on this program. A little bit later, we'll talk more about Greenpeace and what is at stake as we move forward. We obviously interviewed Eva Resnick-Day last week on Friday, and again, that interview is on our website at Jeff Santos Show, JeffSantosShow.com, I should say. One of the things that came out of this is a lot of denials from the Clinton campaign in terms of how much money it was, and they kept referring it back to the Washington Post and the, once again, mainstream media having three Pinocchios. Well, Greenpeace has denied that and come up with more information. And we'll talk to Mr. Cray today, who is a senior researcher on the issue of fracking and so forth, and will give us his thoughts. Of course, the phone number, 772-925-8206. You can email me, Jeff at revolutionboston.com. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter at Jeff Santos Show. One of the issues that I think is important here is that we are at a point in our history as progressives, as those who have looked at over the last 30 years or so, in regards to the focus on what is a populist progressive Democrat and who is a tool of Wall Street. And I advise you to a book called The Great American Stick-Up by Robert Scheer. And its subheading is How Reagan Republicans and Clinton Democrats Enrich Wall Street While Mugging Main Street. I find the book to be fascinating. And I look at this and I'm saying, okay, we have been bamboozled in the Democratic Party now for a while to think that the Clinton administration created all these jobs. And of course, there was the dot-com boom and so forth. And there was the dot-com bust. And that's overall a good thing. But what happened in that time period in the 80s and 90s? And what Mr. Scheer talks about, and it has elements of today's campaign, especially now, and I tweeted this out last night, that the Hillary Clinton campaign is very nervous about New York. They're probably going to lose today. The question is the margin, as we talked about yesterday with Mr. Nichols, who's been all over the TV over the last couple of days. And one of the things that I look at here is that what Mr. Scheer brings up is that what happened in the 1990s, and nobody realizes this, is that a lot, well, I shouldn't say no one, but a very few amount of mainstream media folks ever bring this up. Bill Clinton did the work of Ronald Reagan and those who were elected in the 1980s on the greed and more monopolies and I campaign of the 1980s, the greed campaign of the 1980s, the Wall Street Michael Douglas movie, Greed is Good, continuation into the 1990s. Had a little softer approach, but what Phil Graham could do, the former senator from Texas, and others, and it's in Scheer's book, is the fact, we're going to look to have him on over the next couple of weeks, what basically had happened was that what Reagan couldn't do, because Democrats then controlled the House and Senate after 1986, you had reformers like now Secretary of State John Kerry, then a senator, and they held back against, after the saving and loan scandal in the 80s and so forth. So, little reform, in came Clinton, in came the Republicans, can take control of the House and Senate in 1995 after the Contract on America in 94, and the Gingrich Revolution, if you might. And off we go to the races. GlassSteagall in the year 2000, I believe, becomes, that law is done. Mr. Clinton doesn't veto it, and now we're off to the fiasco that we all ended up with in 2008. And the reason that connects the dots is yesterday, on 3 separate occasions on 2 or 3 of the networks, they're going after Bernie Sanders on the economy. And they're pointing, James Carville is one, Barney Frank another. And now Carville defends, all these jobs were created in the 1990s under Clinton. And again, I'm not refuting how many jobs were created, but how much did they pay, and how much cause of a problem did we have over the next few years because of Glass-Steagall. So that's number one. Number two is this idea that everything was fantastic, according to Carville, in these last 2 administrations, Democratic administrations, were fantastic. And the Affordable Care Act, fantastic. Of course, he never goes to talk about it. And Barney Frank brought this up yesterday, too. Luckily, our good friend Ian Turner, who will be with us tomorrow, refuted that. And the fact is that you're not going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. We're going to build on it. But there are still millions and millions of people who are still being unable to afford health care. And they don't fit into the Medicaid part of it. So they end up falling in this hole because they can't afford the insurance, because everybody has to buy it now under the plan. And that is why, again, we need the single-payer health care. And again, the attack dogs of Hillary, this is why, because they're all out. They're all out. You just look at the major networks, 3 or 4 of them, including the oldies but goodies, Garville and Barney Frank. And they look at Sanders as some sort of devil that brings out the Republican talking points. And what he's trying to say, and this is the best part of this. The reason why Bernie Sanders is running for president is because the Democratic Party has lost its soul. It's lost its values. I remember the old Boston Globe columnist Thomas Oliphant in my first Democratic convention in 1992 talking about the corporate interest. It was sort of like going to NASCAR, and our good friend Sarah Jones, who's regular here on Thursdays at 5 o'clock, said that she wanted to see everyone wear a NASCAR-like uniform on their car and on their jerseys. That's what the drivers wear. Because this is how Wall Street has basically taken a hold of the political process. And where we are at is that we need to figure out a way to get back to the point where we are focused on good government. We are focused on government that works for all of the people. And you're never going to have that when you basically agree with the Republican premise that government sucks, government is too big. Don't forget it was Bill Clinton. I believe in 1995, in the inaugural address, it said, the era of big government is over. Well, when you say that, Mr. President, you basically say that there's no need for a watchdog. Because in order to have big government, I'm not saying there are not reforms that need to be made and people who have been there that shouldn't be there, and so on and so forth. But you need a strong government because you cannot let big business rule the day. And that's basically what Bill Clinton has done. Another thing, there's just the idea that Hillary Clinton was mentioning yesterday that she's going to help all these Democratic candidates because she's going to give them money. From where? From Wall Street. Again, having more people dependent upon Wall Street. As if we don't, need any more. The way that Democrats win elections is to get everybody out. Grassroots, 50-state strategy. Howard Dean did it, and from 2006 to 2009, 2005 to 2009, and what ended up happening is that Democrats won back the House and Senate after 12, 13 years, a lot of them under the Clinton administration. Once Bill Clinton got in office, he ran to the center, and what ends up happening? Democrats lose for the first time in 46 years. Since 1948, I believe it was. Lost the House. They lost the Senate for the first time in, I think, over 20 years. So what ends up happening is that we end up not being able to be vastly different than the Republican Party. And Harry Truman said it. We only need one Republican Party, not two. And Bernie Sanders is here to say, I am a true progressive. And I don't care if I didn't run as a D back in 1990 or in the year 2006. I still have been there with FDR Democrats and JFK Democrats from day one. And Hillary Clinton cannot say the same. We're right back. It's the Jeff Santos Show. 23 minutes past the hour. It is the Jeff Santos Show. Appropriate Foo Fighters song, Lost Our Way, and starting again. That is the Democratic Party. In a nutshell, we lost our way, obviously, when it came to the issue of Wall Street, both with the Clinton and Obama administrations, and the American people revolted in the sense that they stayed home, both in 1994, 2 years after the Clinton administration, and again in 2010, 2 years after the amazing victory that Barack Obama brought us. So there you go. I mean, the evidence is there. You can talk all about the benefits of Clinton and Obama, and of course they were much better presidents than any of the Republicans have offered us since Dwight Eisenhower. But when the bar is as low as the Bushes and Reagan, let's not go crowing here that everything is wonderful in the good old USA. Let's go to the phones. 772-925-8206. Right yesterday, it was in the New York Times today, that it looks like that about 4 or 5 delegates were picked up over the weekend by about 3,000 volunteer Democrats that were with Bernie Sanders in Nevada. So that could be a tie at the end of the day. And add more to Arizona, that's more of a Western front, if you might, for the Clinton campaign, and which has opportunities to win big in Oregon and potentially in California as the campaign moves west in May and June. So yes, I think you're going to see more and more. Any time that you have an opportunity to see Bernie Sanders have time, which is why I'm confident that he will do very well in New York. And of course, the Clinton machine, which, has the governor in their pocket and Andrew Cuomo. The mayor is on their side, although I don't know if his heart is really there because he's more of a reformer than any of the corporate Democrats in New York. They get all the institutional. They have a lot of African Americans, including Gregory Meeks, who basically is a sellout. He's the one that's part of the board. Somebody would even say that if Bernie Sanders won the state, he still wouldn't switch to super delegate. So what we have here is, this is a big test for Hillary Clinton. And, if she loses tonight and again in Wyoming, which is Bernie is favored in both, she will be basically 7 of the last 8 she will have lost going into New York. And in my opinion, you're basically looking at a situation where she now has to win New York. The pressure is on her. She was the former senator. Bernie has not represented that state, even though he grew up there and may understand the values of New York better than her, though. Well, I think the fact that you have these attack dogs out there, whether it's Carville, whether it's Barney Frank, it's others out there, they are out there because they're nervous. They're attacking Bernie at all levels, and that to me is a pure case that they know that they're in trouble in New York, which would create a firestorm at the DNC, and they don't know where to go from there. Thank you, Rudy. We're right back after this timeout. Mark Taylor-Canfield.